Israeli Independence Day. So all our Israeli guests, I wish them greetings on Independence Day. Today is the second week of our sessions. In fact, the last session of the second week, where we're continuing for 4 weeks, and we have two very able and competent speakers who are going to give us a very interesting perspective on the water situation in India. Our first speaker is Ms. Uma from Aquadam. Aquadam has been at the forefront of water research and study in India, a highly respected group. I'm thankful for her and also for Dr. Himanshu Kulkarni to be present during this webinar today. Madam, it's over to you, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Romeo. Good evening, everyone. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to present some of our experiences with all of you. And I will just, without making more ado, I will just share my screen and start my presentation. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is. Yes,
okay. Yes. So I will just start with the presentation, which is titled Capacity Building and Institutional Strengthening for the Effective Implementation of Jal Jeevan Mission. Some insights from 3 districts of Maharashtra. So as the title suggests, Aquadam is working with UNICEF Maharashtra on this topic of capacity building and institutional strengthening in 3 districts, basically Latur, Pune, and Usmanabad. And in this 3-year project, we selected some 100 villages and 111 villages, wherein we wanted to understand what needs to be done at the village level for the drinking water safety and security, and how that can be done through capacity building and institutional strengthening, because there have been number of programs that have been implemented and through CSRs, to government support. But the impact, I won't say that there is no impact, but the impact has been limited. So can we do this through participation, through some participatory groundwater management? And with this focus, we started this program, and we got some interesting findings. And in the next half an hour, I would like to share some of these findings with you. So when we talk about drinking water safety security, it's basically when we say safe water, it is good quality water. And when you say secure water, it's year-round supply. The problem with India today is more than 600 million people face high to extremely high water stress. 75% households do not have drinking water on premise. 84% rural households do not have pipe water access. 70% of our water is contaminated today. And unfortunately, India ranked 120th among 122 countries in the water quality index. Now, these are not my numbers or my figures. This is what the NITI Aayog stated in 2018 when they came up with this composite water report. And in this report, these were some of the facts, some glaring facts that were shared. And looking at these numbers, one clearly feels that there is definitely a need to work on this issue. Since we are based in Maharashtra, we have done quite some work across the state. And while looking at these numbers with drinking water safety security in the state of Maharashtra, we just try to compare the tanker data, because usually in Maharashtra, when we have droughts, most of the villages are tanker fed. So we just try to compare what was the situation between in the last 5 years. So if you compare data between 2015 to 2020, you can see that there is a lot of variation. For example, 2019 was a really, really bad year because 2018 was a drought year. And in that one particular year, almost 15,994 villages or wadis were tanker fed. And 6,443 tankers were providing water to all these villages and wadis. And out of that, almost 90% tankers were private tankers. Now, if you look at the graph here, one can see that between 2017 and 20, the distribution is not uniform. For example, 17, 18, the requirement was less. And here I've only taken 3 divisions, that is Nasik, Pune, and Aurangabad. Usually, if you know a bit of Maharashtra, the Konkan region, to the west, and the Vidarbha region, usually they have less water crisis compared to Marathwada region and Western Maharashtra. And that's why I focused on Nasik, Pune, and Aurangabad divisions. And you can see that there is a great spike in the year of in 2019, where more than 20 almost 3,500 tankers were plying, especially in the Aurangabad region. Now, once you compare this information with the rainfall data, what you see is in the last 5 years, if you compare rainfall with these numbers, there is a direct relationship. For example, 2018 was a year when there was low rainfall, and that got clearly reflected in the spike that you see in 2019 summer, where most of these villages were tanker fed. It is clearly visible that 30%, there is a 30% reduction in rainfall. If there is a 30% reduction in the total amount of rainfall, average annual rainfall, it causes 4 to 15 times increase in the number of tankers. So one can compare the rainfall vagaries, or the uncertainties of rainfall can be compared with the dependency on the exogenous water. At the same time, many villages respond it differently. For example, we were working in Latur and Usmanabad district under this Drops of Hope project supported by UNICEF. In some of the villages, so we did one survey in 30 villages of Usmanabad, just to understand how the community reacts, or what is their response when when there is a drought situation. So we found that most of these villages, although they were having some they were getting water from tankers, some of the sources within the villages were acquired for 2 to 6 months. So for example, if there is a perennial source like a borewell, which is like 600, 700 feet deep, so that borewell was acquired from January onwards, and the Gram Panchayat takes over that borewell, pumps out water, stores it in a tank, and distributes that water to the village. Now, the cost of acquisition for these sources has really gone up. So in 2010, we found that the rate of acquisition per source was around 3,000 rupees, which has gone to 18,000 rupees in 2019. Now, what does it mean? So in 5 months, the Gram Panchayat pays around 90,000 rupees for drinking water supply to some 300, 400, or whatever is the number of households. And in many occasions, it is observed that just one source is not enough. So they acquire multiple sources, so 3 or 4 sources in the village, and the cost goes up in proportion to that. So one can imagine the Gram Panchayat where the people seldom pay the water tariffs. They end up paying that much of amount of rupees to the well owners. The new trend has been that in some of the villages, we found that these well owners, or the source, the borewell owners, they stopped taking the Rabi crop, because instead of taking a Rabi crop, it was more beneficial for them to keep it for summer to provide drinking water, or sell this water to the Gram Panchayat. So these new trends, we were really surprised to see these new trends in the village. These borewells which were acquired, the amount of water that was supplied, it was not of good quality, and therefore people started installing new RO plants. Again, when you install a RO plant, you have to pay to buy that water. So additionally, people paid like 2 rupees a liter this RO water is. So community pays for this RO water. So you end up paying for getting a safe and secure drinking water. The community ends up paying a lot of money. At the same time, the Gram Panchayat also pays a significant amount of money to provide water to the communities. Now, in this whole scenario, the question that comes to our mind is how to achieve drinking water safety and security at the village level. And that's why this whole effort, we have been thinking about this. At the same time, Government of India announced this Jal Jeevan Mission in 2019. Now, we all know about this Jal Jeevan Mission. It is envisioned to provide safe and adequate drinking water through individual household tap connection by 2024. Very, very ambitious program that Government of India has announced. Initially, it was only for rural India. Now it's been extended to the urban sectors also. Now, objectives are like provide, this is very critical. It talks about FHTC, which means that functional household tap connection to every rural household. In the last 5 years, we also we know about Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Each household will be provided a shauchalay or a toilet. Every household will have a toilet. But we all know that although every household has a toilet, whether it is functional or not, it's still debatable. In the same manner, we are talking about FHTC, household tap connection, functional household tap connection, but how functional that will be remains to be seen. Now, for that, the program also talks about empowering and developing human resource for various activities which are related to water sector. So plumbing and water quality management, water treatment, etc., etc. And also it talks about bringing awareness amongst the community members. So the program aims at three important aspects. First is reuse, recharge, and recycle. Similarly, in our Drops of Hope program also, we tried to this Jal Jeevan Mission is an opportunity for all of us. And we try to link our findings with Jal Jeevan Mission. Now, before we go move forward, I have a question for you. We usually believe that everybody looks at water in the sense that it's a surface water or groundwater. But my question to you would be, what is the approximate percentage of groundwater with respect to all usable freshwater resources globally? So you can take a minute. Swapnil, I'll request you to start the poll, please.
Yes, I have started the poll.
Yes, thank you. So you just have to answer what is the approximate percentage of groundwater, especially I'm just talking about groundwater here, with respect to freshwater resources globally.
Okay. I will be closing the poll in another 15 seconds. I request everyone who has not yet answered to please do so. Okay, I am stopping the poll, and let's see the results now, ma'am.
Okay. So the results are almost 32% people have stated that it's 60 to 70%. 63% people have said 30 to 50%, and only 5% have stated 93 to 98%. So it's a very interesting answers that we have got. And you will be surprised to know that out of the total available fresh water that is available globally, groundwater, the percentage of groundwater is more than 95%. And it's, as groundwater is not visible, it's out of sight, and that's why out of all our mind, and that's why nobody really cares about groundwater. I won't say care, but nobody thinks that groundwater is important resource for all of us. To elaborate my point further, what I will do is, we will see how important it is for all of us, and especially with respect to drinking water safety and security. Now, since I said that 95%, and that too globally, the fresh water is available through aquifers, or it is available, or it is sourced through groundwater. What is the situation in Maharashtra? So if you look at just the numbers in Maharashtra, you will be surprised to see that as per the NRDWP data of 2017, more than 92% public water supply schemes are groundwater based today in rural India. And I'm just showcasing the Maharashtra results, but if you look at the all India numbers also, the numbers are not very different. And dependency on groundwater for drinking water supply is huge. It's at least more than 80% across state, across all states. And Maharashtra, as you're seeing on your screen, it's around 92%. The surface water-based schemes are less than 6%, and other sources are negligible. So that is a situation in the state like Maharashtra, where we have largest number of dams in the country. At the same time, if you compare the number of groundwater sources, so the development of groundwater sources that has happened over the years. So from 1960 to 2010, if you compare, the red dotted line shows that how these sources have gone up. So the number of irrigation wells in the state have also gone up, but that has resulted in the reduction or decrease in the average availability of groundwater of water per source. So the real increase in the number of sources happened between 85 to 95. This is the time when the borewell technology came. People started using electric motors, pumps, and all that. And because of that, the number of sources have gone up, but the average daily abstraction per irrigation well, or you can say that the average water that was available through the source reduced significantly. And this is not Aquadam's data, but it's collected from multiple sources. And that is what is there, that is what you see on the ground. So why, like you said, I said before, out of sight, out of mind, understanding down, what is the challenge when you try to manage such a vital resource? So if I ask you what comes to your mind when you talk about groundwater, maybe you will see that obviously it is invisible. So I can't see, so nobody can gauge. Another thing could be, you can say that, okay, there is issue, which means that maybe it's overexploited. Some of you might say that it's a fugitive resource, or it's a private ownership. So it's my well, my bore well. To a river, dam, you seldom say that it's owned by an individual, but it's always that it's my well, my bore well. So the kind of ownership is also is very individualistic. You can't see the resource directly from your naked eyes unless you peep into the well or a bore well. It is not visible. And all these 3 or 4 things actually makes it more and more challenging when you try to manage this resource. So we have seen that the drinking water dependency is huge on groundwater. Drinking water security at a village level is dependent on what? So people, if I ask this question to a community member, he might say that, okay, for me, it depends on this tank. If this tank has water, I will get water. Okay, so this is the larger picture. So this is your village or a watershed where you have number of sources and there is a tank. So does your drinking water dependency depends only on this tank, or it depends on the source from which it takes water? So maybe for some, say 7 or 8 months, this well will give you good amount of water. So the tank is filled and you are getting water throughout these 8 months. But if this well runs dry, if there is no water, then you may switch to another source. But finally, one needs to understand that we need to think beyond the source. It's not this individual source, but we have to look at the larger resource, that is the aquifer that lies underneath. And if your aquifer is healthy, if your aquifer has water, all these sources will have water, and through that, your tank or your the source that you look upon as a source for drinking water will also have water. So this is very, very crucial. So at the village level, if you want to have drinking water security, you need to safeguard your aquifers. So again, to break the monotony, I would like to ask you another question here. So according to you, what is the approximate drinking water demand in percentage of a typical Indian village with respect to total water availability? For example, if there is X amount of water that is available, X percentage of 100% water is available to you, according to you, what is the demand for drinking water through security, like to provide drinking water throughout the year? What is the percentage that one needs to look at? Swapnil, can you please start the poll, please.
Yes, I have just started the poll.
Yes.
Okay, I will be ending the poll in another 10 seconds. I request all of you who haven't answered, please request you to put in your answers or rather key in your options. All right, so let's see the results now.
Okay, so almost 52% are saying less than 5%, 20% are saying 20 to 25%, and 28% are saying more than 50%. So the answer to this question is around less than 5%. So how that I will elaborate. 50% and all is basically for agriculture, but for drinking water security, you need less than 5% water of the total what is available in your at the village level. So just to elaborate this point, we have studied in more than say 1,000 villages across India. And here I would like to give you one example from Maharashtra. You just can imagine any village, a typical village in Hard Rock area, which has an area of about 1,000 hectares, out of which 500 hectare area is under agriculture. There are 100 households and 500 people are depending on that. So in this situation, what is the annual demand? And we have tried to calculate it in millimeter because we usually measure rainfall in millimeter, and that's why we have brought it down to millimeter. So what is the demand for human drinking water, for even for household or domestic use, livestock, then Kharif, Rabi, and summer crops? And the findings you can see in this pie chart, you can see that the total demand for drinking water is less than 1% here for this particular village. It can vary from 1% to 5%. But mostly 98 times you can see that the demand is never more than 5% of the total water available. Now in this situation, if the drinking water demand is less than 2 millimeters per year, in a typical basalt aquifer system, which holds around 50 to 150 millimeters of groundwater, can't we just ensure that out of that 50 to 150 millimeters of water, millimeter of groundwater, we can take care of that 2 millimeter critical water, which is essential for our drinking water needs. So that if we manage that, our drinking water security issue can be sorted or can be solved to a larger extent. And for that, we thought of a program called Participatory Groundwater Management for Drinking Water Safety and Security. Now, what this program includes is basically training and capacity building, because we have seen during the challenges that because of lack of awareness or because of the perception of the communities that it's a my source, my well, my borewell, you need to make them aware about the larger picture, that is about the aquifers. All this management has to be done considering the local level data that is collected at the local level. You need to have a strong institutional support to implement some program. Once you develop a plan for this, it has to be implemented very properly, considering all the challenges. At the same time, you have to include all the stakeholders in this process. And finally, that you need a fund support, because you come up with a plan, you have a very strong implementation plan, but unless and until you have some support, some fund support, this program cannot be implemented at the ground level. So we believe that this program can be implemented if you take into consideration these 5 important factors. And why we thought of PGWM? It's basically there were 5 key questions that we were asking ourselves. So the first key question was, how can the understanding of aquifers shape the practice and policy on groundwater? So how important it is to understand aquifers, because until recently, till 2010, the word aquifer was nowhere in the policy domain or discussion. So we have to bring it to the forefront when we talk about groundwater management. Then can communities take robust decisions about management of groundwaters, possibly by hydrogeology based understanding or knowledge support? So we need to demystify this scientific knowledge or these terms. If we keep on saying using some very hi-fi scientific terms, people will not understand. So we need to demystify this knowledge. We need to improve capacities of the communities so that they can address their own issues at the field level. We can collect some information and data at the local level for improved decision support. So if I'm measuring rainfall, for example, because rainfall everybody knows, if you're considering taluka level the rainfall and you're trying to prepare a water balance for your village, it doesn't make sense. So for that, you have to collect some data at the local level. And also, can these experiences from the field, from these locations, help in reforming the policies? For example, this 111 villages where we are working with UNICEF under this Drops of Hope program, maybe the experiences can be shared with the state level, with the state and center authorities, so that it will help in reforming some of the existing policies. So these were the 5 questions that we were trying to answer ourselves. And with this Drops of Hope program, we try to answer some of these. So quickly, I will go through this program, what it is. It was a demonstration in 11 pilot locations in 3 districts, Latur, Usmanabad, and Pune. And the findings that we had, the learnings we had, we tried to scale it up to 100 villages in the 3 districts. We also tried to develop the cadre at the groundwater for groundwater management. We tried to strengthen the institutions, prepare a drinking water safety security plan at the village level. The whole approach was aquifer based approach. So aquifer was the key factor here. And then we tried to converge this with government programs. So these were the 3 important pillars. One is institutional strengthening, evidence generation, and advocacy. The cross-cutting thing was drinking water safety security. So here what we did is we tried to build the capacities of the community resource persons. So in any village, we thought that we should have at least 3 to 5 community resource person who will work with us closely and collect data for us. We also try to strengthen the capacities of the community-based organizations who are actually doing the implementation work, because they should not do it mechanically. What they are doing, why they are doing should be clearly told to them. And while we were generating evidences, collecting data at the level, at the ground level, and preparing some plan, we also worked on advocacy at various levels. So with the district administration, these plans were shared. How can we take it forward? And with the same thing, at the same time, we also tried to work with the state government. Now, with this background, this is the 3 districts where we were working: Pune, Usmanabad, and Latur. And we had a very clear, defined methodology for this. As you can see in the pictures, this 3-year program, we started with understanding of local conditions. Then we collected some local level data for water levels, water quality testing we did. We also collected weather data with respect to rainfall and other weather parameter through automated weather station. We also did some social surveys. And based on all this information, we did the aquifer mapping and characterization. We did our preliminary water balance. Based on this water balance, we prepared our plans for drinking water safety and security. And based on that, again, the water budgeting was done at the village level. And now we are at the stage of implementation of plan with the district administration. This was not done by Aquadam alone. We were the GSTA, which is the Apex agency, Groundwater Survey and Development Agency, working for Maharashtra. They were involved in this whole process. And at the same time, at the ground level, there was a very good participation from the Gram Panchayat and other local institutions. While we were working in these 3 locations, there were some key challenges with which we had did not envisage at the beginning. For example, in a place like Pune, these were the tribal pockets and wadis. And when very, very local aquifer systems, they had limited sources. And also the resources, the aquifers have limited storage capacity. So in these areas where people came to us, and when we introduced the Jal Jeevan Mission and all these programs, we believe that giving FHTC to each of these locations is a big challenge. They will never be able to get, we have to accept this fact that 365 days through pipe water supply, there are tremendous challenges. And the community itself feels that, okay, fine, if they have their own mechanism of using groundwater, with some basic understanding and basic inputs, they can secure the drinking water source for the entire village. And that was proven that we tried to do in one of the locations in Pune, where the existing structure was, we tried to desilt, and with our hydrogeological inputs, we developed this structure. And finally, now for the last 3 years, this particular wadi is getting water throughout the year, and they don't have to rely on tankers anymore. In Usmanabad district, the situation is very different. There, the entire shallow aquifer is overexploited. There is a huge dependency on bore wells. So the dug wells dry up immediately after the monsoon. If from December onwards, there is absolutely no water in 70-80% wells, and the bore wells are used for the remaining 3 or 4 months. There are some critical water quality issues also. So in Usmanabad, when we tried to understand this development of bore wells, how this development occurred, because the first bore well was drilled in this village in 89. And from 89 to, if you compare 2018, in say in 20-25 years, in a village with 0 bore wells, so you have now around 500 to 1,000 bore wells. This borewell, even this development has also a very interesting trajectory. You can see that the development that has happened is basically between 2010 and 2015, where you can see the rainfall has reduced significantly during this period, and as a response to that, the farmers are going for new borewells. Now, because during this process, from 2015 onwards, you can see a drop in the drilling, which indicates that now, unless and until you drill for 900,000 feet, you can't get water. And that's why the marginal and poor farmers have stopped drilling. And the percentage of failed borewells is also huge in these areas. And in Latur district, basically, although it receives around 700 millimeters of rainfall, we all know about this train journey of water from Miras to Latur. And we feel that there is a lack of management and a need of management. You need to bring people together. The social mobilization is one part that is lacking in these areas. You really need to put in some focused effort to get community support. And at the same time, one interesting fact that we found during this journey was some of the villages which were marked as overexploited by the government, in reality were not overexploited. So you can see, we could see the base flows, that is the streams in some of these villages had water even in the month of February and March, which indicates that the health of an aquifer is really good. And because it falls in that overexploited zone, all the villages were marked as overexploited, and there are serious restrictions that are put in. So some of these interesting learnings that we got through this during this journey with Drops of Hope. And that is why the capacity building approach that we had was we asked ourselves 3 critical questions: why we were doing this, for whom we are doing it, and how we want to do it. So why was very clear, because we wanted to sensitize the community on groundwater management issues and develop decision support for drinking water safety security, who's at all levels, because it's not necessary. We always feel that it has to be bottom up approach, which means that only the community needs to be trained. In reality, you need capacity building at various levels. So community, then community resource person, Gram Panchayat members, village water sanitation committee. At the same time, you also need to build the capacities of the CBOs or the NGOs, and even at some locations, you also need to develop this capacity of the district administration. How we try to do it is by various efforts of classroom trainings, field works, workshops, meetings, social media, videos, posters, info. It's a typical method. But during this COVID era, what we learned was we had to move to the online platform. And surprises of surprises was the community responded very, very positively. And most of them are quite fluently using all these platforms like Google Meet, Zoom, teams and everything. We also developed some interesting interactive training material through animations and videos, which could be shared through WhatsApp. So the innovation is also part of our capacity building exercise, and it has to be. Otherwise, a typical approach will not. I believe that in the post-COVID world, this will not work anymore. So in this, we conducted trainings for CBOs. We conducted and trained the CRPs at village level. We conducted the 50% of the population of the village is women, which are always ignored. So we specifically included women in this whole discussion. We had talks with the women specially. All this data was shared with all women meetings also. The data was collected by the community itself. So as you can see in the picture, when you do something, collect data, do some analysis in the field, in situ analysis, when you do, the people are always inquisitive and they will just keep on asking, and that's how you get a better response from the community. So the community resource persons collected all this information from rainfall to water levels to water quality sampling to pumping test. Everything was done by the community members. We also developed some training material in vernacular language. So most of the products that we developed was in Marathi, because that is the local language here. All the information was very transparently shared with the community. So it was through infographics or some wall paintings that we did. And at the same time, to make this decision support system easier, we also named the well owners whose wells were monitored regularly every month. What is the water level today? What was there 2 years ago? And all this information we try to share with them. And also we developed some small films which could be shared on the social media and platforms like WhatsApp. And we got a fantastic response to this newer method. Why this understanding of groundwater, how it helped us, is when we talk about drinking water safety and security, we usually forget two important aspects. One is, if you want to have a secure drinking water, you need to consider two important aspects. One is source strengthening, and second is source sustainability. And to do so, you need to understand the hydrogeology of the area, the geology of the area. So here you can see that the recharge area, groundwater recharge area, where the interventions are required, that is mapped. So if your drinking water source is located in this aquifer, you really need to work, you really need to put in efforts to recharge the aquifer which is supporting that particular source. At the same time, when you are trying to support some of the activities, you also need to restrict some of these. For example, if your drinking water source is located here, and if there is there is a lot of pumping that is happening in the surrounding area, that impact definitely is going to be on your drinking water source. So for that, you have to identify the area of influence, which is the area that is being affected, that will affect the drinking water source in your particular village. And while doing so, even in Maharashtra, there is a Groundwater Regulatory Act, which also talks about this area of influence, but most of the time it is ignored. So we tried to come up with these, we marked this area of influence for each of these drinking water source, and also did the water quality testing for the groundwater safety, security, and sustainability. To elaborate this point of sustainability and how these wells are affecting each other, we will try to put an animation, and that's how we try to make people aware of this concept. To simplify this concept, we developed this animation. Swapnil, can you please play this 1 minute animation, please?
Yes. 1 moment. After this, we will have to go to the Q&A.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, time is pressing now.
Sure, sure.
The layer of weathered and jointed basalt, along with vesicular amygdaloidal basalt, forms one aquifer. This aquifer is not limited to only one well, but many wells pump out water from one aquifer. Now, if we pump out water from one dug well from an aquifer, then let us see how it impacts the neighboring dug wells. Let us name these dug wells as A, B, and C. Now, the owner of dug well A has started the pump. As the water level in this dug well starts declining, slowly the aquifer starts releasing the water into the dug well. We call it as inflow of groundwater into the dug well. During the process of water level decline in dug well A, after some time we observe that water levels have slightly declined in adjacent wells B and C. The decline in the water level in both these wells may not be visible to our eyes. Why does it happen? Because A, B, and C wells tap the same aquifer. When one well is pumped, the water level in dug wells B and C also goes down. The decline of the water level in dug well A creates a slope in water level, due to which water starts flowing towards dug well A. When the owner of dug well A stops the pump to attain the equilibrium in the water level in the aquifer, water level declines in the neighboring wells. A dug well which pumps out large volume of water is actually pulling water from more than one well.
Yes. So that is how we tried to share this information with the community, try to demystify this information. And Swapnil, can you just give me 1 minute just to close this?
Please go ahead, madam. Please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So finally, what we do is we try to develop the decision support system for local level institutions by developing this strategic documents, and also not only the strategic document, but also with some proposed action plan for the villages, which includes all these things: groundwater-based, balance-based groundwater budgeting, local level data, which is used for planning. The roles of actors is clearly defined, who is going to do what. So if it is VWSC, what is their role? If it is Gram Panchayat, what they needs to be done, what they need to be done, they have to do. Even at the district level, what is the role of ZP and all that. The continuous follow-up of the CRPs and village level institution is done. They follow up with this government authorities, and through this, it has really helped in developing the village action plans and also the water security plans under the Atal Bhujal Yojana, which is upcoming ambitious program launched by the government with the support of World Bank. So lastly, the outcome, I will just like to say in last in 1 minute. What we have achieved through this is basically a pool of resource persons who are well informed, understand the concepts of aquifers. The local level data is collected at the village level, and all this information together has helped us in developing these groundwater management plan. So key learnings have been a very, very strong and trained community based organization is essential if you want to implement this program successfully. You need a pool of trained community resource persons. There has to be a continuous dialogue with community and local institutions. And in the last one and a half years, when due to the COVID pandemic situation, we could not go and visit the communities. But we had to be in touch with them through all these social media platforms and through telephonic conversation we had to have. Then when we develop this plan, you don't have to stop at that. We really need to work hard to get the timely support by the government and other funding agency for implementation of these activities. And a strong coordination is required when you do this plan. And if you have a perfect balance between the understanding, scientific understanding and social mobilization, we can come up with a drinking water safety security plan. Thank you for your patience. I'm very sorry I got overboard. I took 15 minutes extra, but thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. That was so interesting. Unfortunately, we've got so many questions to ask you, but no time to do it. Okay. So what we're going to do is send you an email subsequently, probably later today.
Yes.
Because lots of people have asked questions, and you've generated so many questions in everyone's mind, which is good, which is the whole purpose of this entire exercise, that everyone starts thinking and questioning. So thank you so much for your time.
And thank you so much.
we would like to go to our next speaker, Dr. R.C. Jain. Dr. R.C. Jain is raising a very, very fundamental question in his talk today. And the question is going against all the other speakers who are going to talk within these sessions, whether we fundamentally have a water surplus or water deficit state, or is it all about management? This is a very fundamental and key question which Dr. Jain is raising, and I will give the floor to Dr. Jain so that he can take us through this entire concept. Dr. Jain, please.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
Okay. So, thank you, Mr. Romil, for introducing the subject. Of either what we are in the scarcity of water, or basically it is scarcity of management in India. So we are facing the problem. So we will discuss on this matter. Next one. So basically, see, if we look at the water resources, which we will be looking at in detail in the presentation, we do not have a scarcity of water in India, but a scarcity of water management. Clearly, the major cause of scarcity is mismanagement, and unfortunately, this abounds across the country, as we have seen in the previous presentation also. In the country, there is plenty of water, and also there are plenty of financial resources. But the question is whether we are adequately managing our natural, financial, and human resources so that the water flows to the places it is most needed. Next one. Water scarcity, actually, everybody talks of water scarcity. The water scarcity is defined as the point at which the aggregate impact of all users impinges on the supply or quality of water under prevailing institutional arrangements. This is very important. To the extent that the demand by all sectors, including the environment, cannot be satisfied fully. Under such a situation, we call that the water is scarce. But as per the internationally accepted definition given by Falkenmark, in terms of the water scarcity, water stress indicator, an area is considered water stress when annual water supply drops below 1700 cubic meters per person, and the area is called water scarce when the water supply drops below 1000 cubic meters per person. So what we can see is in India, already we are in a situation of water stress from the year 2005 onwards. The water availability, which used to be more than 5000 cubic meters per year per person, has now decreased to about 1200 cubic meters per person. So from 2005 onwards, we are in a stage of water stress, and the water availability continues to decline, which is projected to be about 1100 cubic meters in the year 2050. Next. So water short. This is basically because of the water shortage, and water shortage is both a natural and a human-made phenomenon. There is enough fresh water in the country, but it's distributed unevenly, and too much of it is wasted, polluted, and unsustainably managed. So we are having the water shortages, and further water use is expected to continue increasing as a function of population growth, economic development, and changing consumption patterns, among the other factors. Now, in such a scenario, you see how we are going to manage the available water resources to meet all our requirements. This is what will be discussed in the following slides. Next one. So you see, if we look at the water resources of India, you see we are nearly 70.5% of the global population, but only 4% of the countries of the freshwater resources of the world. The estimated annual precipitation is about 4,000 billion cubic meters, including the snowfall, and the average annual potential in rivers and aquifers is about 1869 BCM. We are already losing something like 1100 BCM to evaporation. That is nearly 30%, 30 to 35% of the water is lost in evaporation. And against the average potential, the estimated utilizable is only 1120 BCM because of the topography and other distribution constants, of which surface water constitutes about 690 billion cubic meters and groundwater about 432 billion cubic meters actually. So the per capita water availability as on 2011 was about 1545 cubic meters. The storages which we have been able to create so far in terms of major and medium irrigation projects, they are about 300 BCM. So less than 50% of the total surface water which is available could be only stored and diverted. And per capita water storage is something like 208 cubic meters. Estimated surface and groundwater utilization is about 700 BCM, taking about 450 BCM of surface water and about 249 BCM of groundwater. Next one. So now the question is, I think question will be displayed. Hello.
No, sir, I'm launching the poll, sir.
Achha, okay, fine.
Yeah.
So the question now is, what are the reasons actually which are leading to major water scarcity in India? The question is a multiple choice question. Various choices are given, and then we'll be discussing about the relative importance of each of these factors, that how they are responsible. So the first important factor is disparities in climate and rainfall across the country because of the diversity in rainfall. Then there is a huge gap between irrigation potential created and utilized. A lot of irrigation potential has been created through creation of major dams, and but ultimately the water does not reach to the fields because there is no simultaneous groundworks of CAD. Then over exploitation of groundwater, then virtual water export. We are already exporting a lot of water in terms of crops and other items which I will be discussing. Then overpopulation, of course, our population is increasing, and the pollution. So I would request you to kindly mark the major causes. What do you feel that could be the most important and responsible for this scarcity in India?
We have a lot of people who are answering it.
Okay.
I will be closing the poll in another 10 to 15 seconds max. So I request all of you to please answer the question which you can see on the screen. Wonderful. So I'll now be stopping the poll. Let's see the results, sir.
Okay. Okay, so what I could see is, most of the causes have been considered by a good number of audience to be the major causes, but overexploitation of groundwater has secured the highest, marking.
Yeah.
Then also, I think disparities in climate and rainfall, and also the irrigation potential created and utilized. They are the major causes, yes, but also virtual water export, also 39%. I think, yes, this is also important. And of course, overpopulation and pollution, they are also contributing. Okay, next one. So as we have seen, the main factors affecting water scarcity in India are regional climatic disparities, underutilization of irrigation potential created, overexploitation and virtual water export, overpopulation and water pollution. But not only these main factors, water scarcity is also influenced by such factors as social, institutional, and policy arrangements, lifestyles, and water quality. Next one. So let us, discuss one by one. Of the 1870 billion cubic meters of water reserves in India, only, as I said, 1120 BCM can be exploited because of topographic constraints and distribution effects. Now, the changes in temperature and precipitation, they have actually affected the regional water resources and flood risk, exacerbating regional disparities in water availability across the country. India receives something like 115 centimeter of rainfall in a year, but it has great spatial variation, as we'll see in the next slide. And then the second part is, most part of India receives more than 80% of the rainfall during the short period of June to September, these monsoon months. And the rainfall is there mostly in October to December in Tamil Nadu. Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, they receive significant rainfall in all the four seasons. So the significant precipitation occurring over a short period results in a high volume of runoff and consequential floods. and acute water shortages are common in many regions during the rest of the year because we are not able to store that rainfall either on surface or below the surface. Not only this, many Indian cities and towns often run out of water during the summer because of the absence of sufficient water systems and infrastructure, leaving groundwater as the only feasible source. Next one. See, as you can see from this picture, you see this shows the high variability of rainfall. This is the spatial variability. You see, we have got very high rainfall in the northeastern part and also in the western coast of India, but the rainfall declines progressively as we go towards north and northwest. And similarly, we can see that the major part of precipitation is confined to these 4 months, June, July, August, and September, about 80% of it. Next one. So this is one of the major regions. The second region is actually the underutilization of irrigation potential. See, we have been we have been able to create an irrigation potential of about 113 million hectares by 2012. Against the ultimate potential of about 140 million hectares, but the utilization has been very poor. Today, against about 50 million hectares of potential created from major and medium dams, we are able to utilize only about 35 million hectares, and the gap is something like 28%. In case of minor surface and groundwater structures also, the created potential is about 65 million hectares and the utilized potential is only about 52.5. So here also the gap is 20% and overall the gap is something like 23%. So what is happening is millions of liters of water is lying unused in the command areas of our large dams in India, which should actually reach the farmers for whom it is meant. These dams were built at a huge financial, social and environmental cost, but they have not yet fulfilled their promise. Our focus has been on building more and more dams and not on putting in place last mile connectivity to ensure that this water reaches the farm. Next one. Yes, over-exploitation. This is also very important. See, so far as groundwater extraction is concerned, India is extracting something like 250 billion cubic meters of water per year, which is more than the combined withdrawals of US and China taken together. You see, they are the largest withdrawal of groundwater. So their total usage is also less than India's use. And then what has been, and this water is being extracted through something like 20 million wells with free and subsidized power supply. And about 90% of the extracted groundwater is consumed by agricultural sector. As per the assessment carried out by the Central Groundwater Board for March 2017, for about 6,880 assessment units, 1186 units are overexploited. Overexploited means basically where we are drawing water more than what is getting replenished. So we are drawing more than 100% of the water which is getting recharged. And these are the areas which are located in northwestern part of the country, including Punjab, Haryana, Delhi, and western Uttar Pradesh, where there is a good replenishable resource, but indiscriminate withdrawals of groundwater has taken place. Then we come to the western part of the country, Rajasthan and Gujarat, which also have got a good number of overexploited and critical units. Here, basically, the water scarcity is flat because of the arid climate and the recharge itself is limited, leading to stress on the resources. Then the southern part of the peninsula, few overexploited units. Here, the inherent aquifer properties are of low storage, and as a result, you see, we won't have a good, available aquifer. Next one. And then water export. See, all of you would be knowing India is reportedly the top net exporter of virtual water in the world. We are exporting something like 95 billion cubic meters of fresh water through crops and animal and industrial products. This does not look huge, but consider the fact that extraction is highly localized. See, 95 BCM makes something like 15% of the total utilization of the country actually. And this is probably not included in water rendered unusable through contamination during production of the crops and industrial products. So can a country like India, which is facing deficit in water resources, afford to export it unless we reduce the water footprint significantly? This is further supported by the next slide. See, like, for example, I have taken the case of export of rice from India. India is the second largest producer of rice in the world, about 160 million tons in 2018-19. and it has exported 12 million metric tons of rice, that is basmati and non-basmati quality. Rice takes about 3,500 liters per kilogram of water for production, and the total water exported is about 42 BCM. Now, the water footprint for rice exported alone accounts for 36% of the total groundwater extraction of top 5 rice producing countries, rice producing states like UP, AP, Punjab, Tamil Nadu, and West Bengal. Then there are other major exports: sugar, cotton products, cotton, machinery, etc., which also have similar stories to tell. Next one. And then overpopulation. You see, actually, this is causing tremendous stress on water supply. The estimated population is something like 1.3 billion. Already, we have crossed that. And because of the various socio-economic factors and the large influx into the urban centers from rural areas, we are facing a lot of problem actually. And the rapid urbanization with resulting increase in paved areas and decrease in reservoir capacity, drainage and space for recharge areas has resulted into urban local flooding also. As the population continues to grow and migration of population in already stressed urban center continues, demand for water will put additional stress on allocated freshwater resources. Next one. Then pollution. Pollution is also another major problem. Pollution could be of two types. It could be non-point sources such as pesticides and fertilizers from farms, along with non-point sources such as the industrial and human waste, a significant amount of which is directly dumped into the rivers without treatment. The largest source of water pollution in India is the untreated sewage and partially treated industrial effluent, which have also seeped underground, polluting the groundwater in some of the areas. In most of the urban areas, untreated wastewater is often discharged to streams, affecting downstream water quality and causing health problems. And during summer months, what happens is with the low flow conditions of surface water, the contaminated discharge reaches higher levels because there is not enough dilution. Next one. Then the water demand scenario as projected by the National Commission on Integrated Water Resources Development constituted by the Government of India, we can see that there is a persistent increase in the water demand from 710 in the year 2010 to 843 BCM and ultimately 1180 BCM. Now, with this scenario, how we have to cope up with our requirements and how we have to manage with the resources, that's what I'm going to discuss in the presentation. Next one. So there is a definite need to improve the water management in India. And the first very important thing is, so far water management remains heavily dominated by traditional human-built grey infrastructure, that is the engineering structures, and the enormous potential for working with the nature remains underused in India. Hence, a paradigm shift is needed in management approaches towards water shortage challenges in India through progressively increasing use of nature-based solutions across all sectors, including water needed for agriculture, sustainable cities, disaster reduction, and water quality. Both nature-based solutions for conservation, that is by harnessing the opportunities of the hydrological cycle with rainwater harvesting, stormwater management, and so on, and grey infrastructure upgrades, that is improving operations of water distribution system and infrastructure, can together play a very big role in better water infrastructure for India. So the water management situation in the country requires a paradigm shift, as I said before, from strictly conservative approach to increasingly more green nature-based solutions and a mix of other specific technical and policy interventions like increasing water use efficiency, addressing water energy nexus, and regulatory measures for controlling human interventions and behavior with institutional response to natural phenomena. Next one. So now let us look at the nature-based solutions for water security and resilience. Of late, during the recent years, the dialogue on water and environment has significantly shifted towards the ways in which environment can not only be conserved, but manage to meet human needs sustainably with a focus on working with nature to produce co-benefits for both people and nature. And the nature-based solutions for water have contributed importantly to this dialogue. So now we can see in India, the option of building more surface water reservoirs is increasingly limited by uncertain precipitation, reservoir siltation, environmental concerns, and the fact that most cost-effective and viable sites have already been used. In addition, increasing temperatures lead to increasing water loss through evaporation. So as a part of this shift, as a part of this paradigm shift, groundwater and subsurface environments that contain it, that is, the aquifers are increasingly seen as strategic and integral resources for enhancing water supplies and other natural ecosystem services that support human development and resilience. So it is increasingly important to enhance, manage and sustain services derived from nature-based infrastructure of aquifers through managed aquifer recharge. The technique is the managed aquifer recharge by managing and optimizing underground water storage to increase resilience in dry periods or seasons of uncertain and variable climate. Next one. So what are the green and gray infrastructure improvements which could be looked at? The green infrastructure approach uses natural processes to enhance availability of water through soil moisture retention and artificial recharge of groundwater, improve the water quality through natural and constructed wetlands, riparian buffer strips, and reduce risk associated with water-related disasters and climate change through floodplain restoration and green roofs. So basically, this infrastructure, green infrastructure, expands the low-impact development approach to a larger community and scale and presents similar sustainable opportunities for local governments and regional projects also. To develop a sustainable water supply scenario in India, green infrastructure approach can substitute, augment, or work in parallel with the gray infrastructure in a very cost-effective manner. So both nature-based solutions for conservation and sorry, for example, harnessing these opportunities for hydrological cycle, rainwater harvesting, stormwater management, and also upgrade to infrastructure can play a big role in better water infrastructure. Nature-based solutions mainly address water supply through managing precipitation, humidity, and water storage, infiltration, and transmission, so that improvements are made in the location, timing, and quantity of water available for human needs. This is what we want in India, that at the desired time, we don't have the requisite availability, and we must adopt to the nature-based solutions now. Next one. What are the solutions? So for managed aquifer recharge, the Central Groundwater Board in the Ministry of Jal Shakti has carried out mapping of the entire country on a suitability basis for demarcating the areas for artificial recharge. And it has been found out that about 11 lakh square kilometer of the area is suitable for recharge, which is having depth to water level between 3 and 8 meters and declining trend of water level with water quality deterioration. And it has been assessed that about 185 billion cubic meters of water can be made available, which is non-committed, that can be utilized for recharge. And the effective recharge could be of the order of 130 billion cubic meters. Now, this is the water which is otherwise not going utilized, and this is the best possible nature-based solution to basically provide a very viable management support to the situation in India. It has been estimated that the cost of implementing this scheme, which has been detailed out state-wise, is about 133,145 crores, which is about US$ 17,750 million. And the priority areas where the recharge is required to be taken up or demarcated, basically the priority areas have to be the northwestern part of the country, the western part of the country, and also in the southern part of the country, where the depth to water levels are deeper. Next. Then when we come to gray infrastructure, this is basically improvement to management practices for irrigation projects. This is very important, because this is required to be done in a campaign mode to close the gap between irrigation potential created and irrigation potential utilized through farmer participatory CAD works. So far, it has been a government-driven initiative, and there was not participation of the people in the CAD works. So this is very important that a shift is required to have participatory CAD works, so that the canal water basically reaches the fields through the field channels. So what is required is aggressive promotion of participatory irrigation management through water use associations at outlet and distributory level. And this is required to be supported by establishment of a minimum irrigation service fee at a reasonable level, which has been prescribed by the Finance Commission, 13th Finance Commission. And what is important is maximization of the collection of irrigation service fee through WUAs, among other things, by allowing them to retain 50% of this collected fee for maintenance and distribution of the system, because many of the systems are not in use because there is no maintenance of the system actually. So enhancing resources available to major and medium irrigation project departments for improving operation and maintenance of irrigation systems through technological improvements such as automation and use of IT related services is also important, because we are using decades practices of management of the O&M of irrigation systems. Then we also need to broaden the disciplinary skill set available with irrigation departments. Basically, the irrigation departments are heavily, tilted towards the engineering side, but we need to include social sciences, agriculture, extension, and skills also, and substantially improving the amount and quality of training and capacity building opportunities for the staff at, major medium irrigation units. Next one. If you look at the scope of improvement of water use efficiency in India, if you look at the irrigation sector, in surface water, the present level of efficiency is something like around 30%, and in groundwater sector, it is about 55%. It is possible to achieve 60% of irrigation efficiency in surface water and 75% in the groundwater sector. So the scope of increase is 30% and 20% respectively. And if we do so at the level of utilization of 2010, 710 BCM of water, we are able to save something like 146 billion cubic meters of water just by increasing the efficiency. And this efficiency, if we just increase the efficiency by 20% from the existing level, then also we are able to save something like 110 BCM of water. So, see, there is a large scope of improvement of the efficiency in the surface and groundwater irrigation sector. In drinking water also, from 60% to it can be achieved anything like up to 90% in urban and rural water sector. It can be achieved up to 95%, which is about 80% in the industries. So this way also we can save, say, another 20 BCM of water. So the total water which could be saved is something like 130 BCM. This is a huge quantity of water which can be saved through improvement of the water use efficiency. How do we go about it? Next one. So traditional irrigation techniques, they result in significant water loss from evaporation, drainage, percolation, water conveyance, and excessive groundwater use. The potential solutions include educating farmers on best practices, including micro irrigation techniques such as drip and sprinkler irrigation and precision irrigation. So even if there is a 10% increase in the water use efficiency in irrigation projects, an additional 14 million hectare area can be brought under irrigation from the irrigation capacities. As per the estimates made by the National Water Commission, about 112 BCM of water could be saved by 20% increase in efficiency. The main reasons for low water use efficiency are deficiencies in water delivery systems and inefficient water management in the fields. And why we are looking at agriculture, why we want to focus on agriculture, because irrigation and agriculture account for more than 80% of the water budget. And if you focus on the 80% use of water, any advances will translate into gain in another sector. Next one. Next one. Then we have got the issue of non-revenue water. Actually, the non-revenue water is high for several reasons in India. That is because of the advanced system age, poor maintenance, illegal connections, leakage, and lack of proper mapping. Average non-revenue water is about 32% in India as per the estimates of the Asian Development Bank. And in some Indian cities, the non-revenue water is more than half of what is being produced. The major determinants of water utility successful performance are mainly lack of metered connections and the extent of distribution networks with inadequate pumping facilities. So better water accounting would support more economically viable water markets for an already stressed water sector. And to this end, the creation of a robust water accounting framework is integral to better water policy for India. It is estimated that typical Indian municipal water utility has the potential to improve water pumping system efficiency by 25% and thereby increasing supply reliability also. Next one. Then wastewater treatment. See, this is also hitherto unexplored area of utilization of these resources. Reuse of treated wastewater could be an effective instrument for strengthening the financial position of the municipalities. It will not only strengthen the financial burden of local governments, but also help in addressing the problems of domestic water pollution. India should give emphasis on developing 100% treatment capacity to the secondary level of treatment, and treated wastewater can be used for irrigation purposes and industrial purposes. Some of the states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, and Tamil Nadu have already taken measures in this regard, and they have mandated reuse of treated municipal wastewater for irrigation and industrial purposes, subject to certain conditions. And the revenue obtained can be utilized to supplement the sewage treatment costs. India has defined wastewater discharge standards for domestic and industrial sectors, but there are no discharge standards for the pollution emanating from agriculture, which is contributing major portion to non-point pollution. So we need to define these standards also and ensure that it happens. Therefore, corrections in fertilizer and pesticide and electricity pricing policies could be an instrument for addressing the non-point water pollution in India. Next one. Then the other important resource which we have not focused upon is use of saline and brackish groundwater. The yield of many crops and vegetables and fruits like barley, dates, and pomegranate, when irrigated with saline or brackish water, are not significantly affected. It has been estimated, that we have got something like 1100 BCM of brackish and saline water in parts of Haryana, Punjab, Delhi, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu. So this water can be put to direct utilization for such crops where we don't require water of such a high purity and less TDS. Then dual water supply system in urban settlements. In this case, fresh treated water can be given for drinking water supply and brackish water can be utilized for other domestic purposes. So your use of this resource will help save fresh or good quality water for use by other sensitive crops or for other uses. Next one. So, this map shows the distribution of saline water sources in northern part of in northwestern part of the country and also in southern part of the country. Next one. Then the other important improvement required is intelligent management of the energy irrigation nexus. Because managing the energy irrigation nexus with sensitivity and intelligence is the principal tool for groundwater demand management in India. Tariff reform has proved a political challenge in many of the states, but number of hybrid solutions have been invented, like Gujarat's experience under the Jyotigram Yojana illustrates a hybrid approach based on intelligent rationing of power supply. But other states in the country are also moving in the direction of demand management by rationing power. Like in Punjab, they are using effective stringent power rationing in summer to encourage farmers to delay rice transplantation by a month, and in the process significantly reduce groundwater depletion. Andhra Pradesh gives farmers free power but has now imposed a 7-hour ration. And Haryana has introduced higher MSP for less water intensive crops, thus reducing electricity demand as well as reducing groundwater depletion. Next one. Regulatory framework in India is there, but the problem is there is no enabling institution, and as such, these fine policies which are made as a document at the Government of India level and also at various state levels, they are not getting really translated in actual practice. We have got very fine, the best possible, arguments included in the National Water Policy, and also a draft National Water Framework Bill has been drafted, which has been circulated to various states. But unfortunately, it is yet to be adopted by many of the states in India. Next one. And same is the story about groundwater also. The groundwater model bill, which has also been formulated in the year 2016 and has been circulated, but it is also yet to be adopted by many of the states in the current form, because this bill follows the principle of subsidiarity, ensuring the participation of lowest level of functioning in decision making. And it proposes a new legal framework that will ensure availability of groundwater for livelihood, in effect ensuring that overwhelming majority of the small farmers will have available water for their crops and resulting in effective regulation of the large-scale groundwater use. This bill, because you see, as my previous speakers have already stated, I need not re-emphasize the importance of groundwater. This bill is built around the holistic principle of sustainability of water resources, including surface and groundwater, for meeting the basic needs. And it recognizes that groundwater perhaps is the single most important resource governing India's future economic development and life and livelihood security for the Indian people. Next one. Then smart planning. This we have started of late to achieve some of these goals. What have been stated in the previous slides. India has started planning and developing a few cities, initially with 20 smart cities. In the vacant lands, later on this number has been increased to 100. Now these smart cities, they represent comprehensive development, institutional, physical, social and economic infrastructure to reduce congestion air pollution and resource depletion, boost local economies, promote interactions, build computer-aided efficient transport systems and water infrastructure, and ensure security. The main idea behind the smart city concept is to promote mixed land use in area-based development, planning as it were for unplanned area containing a range of compatible activities, and land use close to one another to make the land use more efficient. Next one. So ultimately, you see, I am trying to now conclude the impact of the proposed water management interventions, which I have discussed. The first intervention is aggressive promotion of the efficient water resources management practices in all sectors. This has the potential of saving nearly 110 BCM of water. Then use of nature-based green solutions. There is a possibility to utilize about 185 BCM of the non-committed water to build up the resource availability. Then use of brackish and saline water, which will provide about 1100 BCM of water. Only part is being utilized now. Then improvement of grey infrastructure to minimize non-revenue water. Basically, the distribution network in the cities and major urban cities can save about 10 BCM of water. Then increase in sewage effluent treatment capacity and mandatory use of treated wastewater in urban, industrial and agriculture sector will also provide something like 10 BCM of water. So the proposed management strategy, which I have discussed in a broad manner, are leading to generation of about 300 BCM of fresh water, 10 BCM of treated fresh water for reuse, utilization of huge brackish and saline waters, and additional 26 million hectares for irrigation potential by closing the gap between IP irrigation potential created and irrigation potential utilized. Then we have to also have the enabling regulatory framework for water allocation and utilization with institutional framework for effective enforcement. The additional revenue generation could be of the order of 47 billion rupees only from 2.3 BCM of groundwater used by industry. So you can look at the quantum of revenue which will be generated. And then ultimately what is also needed is capacity building, awareness, incentives and disincentives for efficient water use. Next one. Yes, we have another question. Can you display the question?
I'm launching the poll, sir.
So now, having said what are the possibilities to overcome the scarcity gap, now do you believe at this stage that it is possible to overcome the scarcity with proper water management in India? The possible options are yes, if you emphatically say agree, no, if you do not agree, and maybe you see if you feel that partly it can be helpful or otherwise. So you are requested to kindly mark your responses.
Okay, so I will be closing the polling in another 10 seconds. I request all of you to please respond to the poll on your screen in case you haven't already. Okay, so let's see the results.
Yes. Okay. So that's a good, that's a good realization that it is possible to overcome scarcity with proper water management. And this is what was intended to be, discussed over the presentation in a short time of about half an hour. That how really we can improve the water management practices. We are not short of water, but basically management practices are required to be improved. Some 20% of the people, 1/5 of the people say that it is not possible, and maybe another 16%, they are not very sure. So I think we have a dominant opinion in the form of proper management would definitely lead to improvement in the water situation in the country, and we can definitely overcome the scarcity. Can you go to the next slide, please? So what we have to do is for adaptation and resilience in many regions of the India, water supply scenario is variable. And as you have seen now, India is not a water deficient country in general, but from the neglect or lack of proper management, several regions in the country experience water stress from time to time. The country therefore needs to implement water management strategies that are adaptive and resilient because it faces an uncertain water future as a result of climate variability and social change. Like other developing nations, India needs to make it a priority that significant investments are allocated in green nature-based solutions and also improving grey infrastructure and regulatory institutions for sustainable development. The nation's water policy should be ultimately integrated under the one water concept to support social, environment, and economic needs under sustainable way. Better management of water systems with blended green and grey infrastructure solutions, efficient use of water in irrigation, domestic and industrial use, and the restoration and protection of water resources are the keys to India's socio-economic development going forward. Next one. So the way forward is the low-hanging fruit is closing the gap between irrigation potential created and irrigation potential utilized, which can be picked up by investing in CAD works in a farmer-friendly mode through WAs, then extension, renovation, and management of the projects under different reforms. The second important part is aggressive promotion and incentivization of sprinkler and drip irrigation on a massive scale in general, and overexploited and critical areas in particular that can be most important demand side management strategy for overconsumption. Then manage aquifer recharge, intelligent management of energy irrigation nexus and participatory groundwater management. They offer a major opportunity for water secure and resilient India. The managed aquifer recharge is the most economic, most benign, most resilient, and most socially acceptable solution, but has not been given due importance in the past out of the lack of awareness, inadequate knowledge of aquifers, immature perception of risk, and inadequate policies for integrated water management, including linking MIR with demand management. So mandating progressively use of recycled and treated wastewater, this is a huge potential. Then encouraging use of brackish and saline groundwater and enabling legislations for water management. They are very, very important. In addition to managing the surface water, groundwater, and treated wastewater in a conjunctive manner, because this is a big, hitherto unexploited opportunity for supply side management. Next one. Next one. I think that's all. So thank you for patient hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jain. That was really, really informative and power-packed. And I'm happy to inform all the participants that each issue which Dr. Jain has taken will be in our series of lectures. We have a lecture especially on agricultural water. We have a lecture on Tuesday on water management and planning. We have a lecture on groundwater recharge. So we have specific lectures from different experts globally on each of these topics. We've run out of time, but I will request my co-moderator, Dr. Samir Kulkarni, to take a question or two so that we can quickly wrap this up and go ahead. Samir.
Thank you, Romil. Thank you, Dr. Jain, for this very informative talk. It was basically like, it covered the overall range, I believe, starting from where really is the problem and what hopefully can be the solutions. I'll just take maybe a couple of questions since we have run out of time, and the rest can be emailed over to me. So one question that has come up is basically the management of water resources. Is this a failure on part of the government or on part of the citizens? Or is it basically is it a failure of the policy or the mindset? What do you think?
No, it is not a failure of the policy. See, as I said in my presentation also, basically policies have been very nicely crafted out. But the only issue has been the involvement of the functionaries, basically. The stakeholders have not been involved in decision making. As a result, most of the policies could not be really translated on the ground in the way it was expected to happen. And this is a major flaw that, stakeholder involvement is not there in proper decision making. The entire planning is done at the top without really understanding that what will be really translated on the ground and whether it is acceptable to the persons for whom you are doing the implementation.
Right. Another question is basically, so what steps is the government taking for groundwater recharge? I mean, any specific examples?
Actually, various governments are encouraging recharge to groundwater, and the Central Groundwater Board, wherein I work, has implemented more than 1,000 artificial recharge projects to demonstrate the technologies which could be feasible in different areas, because India is a country of diverse hydrogeology, diverse rainfall, and diverse requirements of water. So with these pilot projects being carried out by the Central Groundwater Board, the results of which are available on the website, and they have also brought out a master plan for artificial recharge. There are several programs through which it is possible to take the funds for water utilization. Take for example, in the NREGA itself, more than 40% of the funds are earmarked for water conservation works. Then there are so many other programs, watershed development programs. So through which also you can have a lot of soil water conservation and recharge for groundwater. Then there are programs like, the most recent initiative of the government of India is it is implementing now Atal Bhujal Yojana in 7 of the most critically affected states, wherein you see, they are trying to bring together convergence of all the schemes. What is happening is different departments are working independently according to their own vision and direction, but they do not converge to have a proper resource utilization, and as a result we are not getting the results. See, a lot of funds are being invested, a lot of funds are being given, but unfortunately convergence has not been taking place. So this is one scheme wherein you see the government is trying to see in a pilot mode that if the convergence of schemes is brought out, I think wonderful results can be obtained.
Sure. Well, I think we will stop over here since we have ran out of time.
Okay.
There are quite a few more questions, and I'm sure that Romil would email those over to you.
Okay.
So that basically those can be shared with the group eventually.
Okay.
The questions and the answers. But thank you very much. I think it was a very informative session. And I think in a way, Romil, I believe that it actually, gelled very well with the first talk actually bringing out the, technicalities of groundwater, issues. And then in the second talk with Dr. Jain necessarily bringing in the actual policy related issues and the possible solutions to it. So thank you very much to all the participants, and hopefully, and we will see you again. I think next Tuesday, right?
That's
so,
right.
Romil, back to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us. That was a really enjoyable session. Both the sessions were complimentary, as was unexpected actually, but it happened to be complimentary. And we look forward to seeing you on Tuesday and Thursday, of course, next week and the week after that. This Tuesday, we have master planning for water, we have wastewater, and next Thursday, we will be having on groundwater recharging. So we look forward to seeing you. Of course, you'll be receiving our emails. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.